I'm William King from Manx Radio's news team. The Director of Manx National Heritage is calling on the government to approve funding for a regeneration project as soon as possible. The plans are to redevelop the Nautical Museum in Castletown, which involve returning the 18th century schooner, the Peggy, to the site. Manx Radio's Phil Gawne has been there to speak to the Director of Manx National Heritage, Connie Lovell, and on this podcast you can hear their conversation in full.
The Peggy was sitting in a cellar quite happily for 100 plus years. What on earth is Manx National Heritage deciding to do? Dragging it out, drying it out, and then putting it in a big glass case?
Well, you'll know, Phil, from your past experience, that there was a request by Tynwald in 2021 for Manx National Heritage to come back to Tynwald with a report to say how and when are we going to bring the Peggy back to Castletown. So since that time, the team at Manx National Heritage have been doing just that, looking at the best options. Bringing the Peggy back to exactly where she was is not an option. It's not good for the Peggy, and it's not taking the benefit of the international significance of the Peggy and using that for the benefit of the island. And that's really important because internationally she is very important. We say that's our victory. She's that important, and perhaps we don't all realise that.
To most people it's an interesting boat, but so why is it so historically important, on a par with the Victory?
Well, I suppose the simplest thing to say, and my curator colleague will give you a much better answer, but I think the simplest thing to say is that every yacht that you see in our harbours with a drop keel, the Peggy is the great-great-grandmother of all of those. And that very innovative design by George Quayle has been followed all the way through the centuries to now. And people are still using that design. And that's really important. But going back to your question about the cellar, what we're doing here on this site, and this is a really important point, the money that we would like to invest in this site is not just about the Peggy. And that's really important. Where we're standing now, Phil, you can see there are buildings outside that have never been in use. You can see the state of the courtyard. There's been underinvestment in the site for a very long time. And what this investment will do is bring the whole site back into use, the whole site. It will also address issues that we've got with water ingress. There's a conservation deficit here. There's repairs to be done. And we're creating a new build, a boat hall, where we will display the Peggy, and she will be magnificent in there, and that will really bring her out in her full glory and allow people to engage with the story of the Peggy. But then the rest of the site will be brought up to, it will be an all-weather and an almost fully accessible site. Now, there aren't many of those on the island, so there's only the cabin room where we can't beat out the walls because of the historic nature of the building, but we will be able to get wheelchairs in here. In the boat hall, there will be 3 floors. There'll be a lift to go up and down, and you'll be able to stand underneath looking up at the Peggy, looking across the Peggy, and standing in the crow's nest looking down. And that will all be fully accessible. Now, we know from the visitor economy perspective that unless we invest in our visitor attractions, we will start to lose people. And there's an ambitious target of 500,000 in the next 10 years. This is due for completion if we can raise the money. This will be completed at the end of 2025, early 2026. That's almost halfway through that 10-year strategy. And I'm not aware of any significant capital investment in visitor attractions to help achieve that figure. Cruise ships coming in, tour operators and tour groups coming in, they are looking for something new. They are selling their itineraries 2 years in advance, and already there's a huge amount of interest in this project. So bearing in mind the timing, we really need to start selling this in the next 12 months, and that will secure, hopefully, lots of new operators, but it will help us retain the business and bring repeat visitors back to the island. So it will be telling the broader story of the maritime history. It will be telling the story of the innovative approach of George Quayle. We'll be telling the story of William Hillary and the birth of the RNLI. We've got so many rich stories, but it will be done in an engaging way. And hopefully it will be a place where the residents of the island will want to keep coming back for repeat visits, as well as bringing in new visitors. And on that point, there are only 2 of our sites at the moment that are open all year round. So the House of Manannan and Manx Museum. We would like this site to be open, even if only at weekends, all the way through. And that in itself will be something that's really good for the island population as well.
You mentioned about the if you can raise the funding. What's the position at the moment with regards to that?
It's a challenge. Yeah, I'll be absolutely honest. It's a challenge. So not shying away from this, the total cost will be just over 6 million, 6.1 million. But as I say, that's for the entire site. I really wouldn't want any of your listeners to think that we're spending £6.1 million on the Peggy. We're not.
Because there's a lot of buildings here, aren't there? I mean, there's the remnants of there's an old cart shed, there's a barn, presumably a stable, a pigsty, an outside, a traditional Manx tie veg, as well as all the buildings that everyone who's visited the Peggy in the past would be familiar with.
Yeah, well, actually, they wouldn't, you see, because they would have never had access to it before. So this is on the other side of the gate and not a part that's been visited. So this is all a site that's been really underused, and we're bringing it back into use and make a contribution to the economy. And that's really quite important to stress that we're doing that across the whole site. But come back to your question about the funding. There's probably three approaches to this. We had said right at the outset that we would do our best to raise as much as we could. And we were aiming for half of it at least if we could. I would say not at least, but get to half if we could. That's a tall ask. We're doing really well, and we are getting support. But some of that support is on the basis that this will happen. Now, they don't want to, people don't necessarily, in organisations, and they don't necessarily want to fund something open-ended. They want a very specific project that's going to have an impact on the economy. This is a truly transformational regeneration project. And that's the thing that there is an interest in. So we would like to get to that 50%, but it's going to be tough. We will make a submission to Treasury. And again, I'll be upfront, it's a challenging time to go to the government to ask for any money. We know that. But if you recall, we were asked in 2021 to come back with a business case. That's what we've done. We've addressed the point about the Peggy must come back. How are you going to bring her back? Where are you going to put her? And hopefully we've gone a step further and we've said we're going to take advantage of the importance of the Peggy and create something much better. Now, you've got to have realistic ambition. Having said that this will be completed at the end of 25, early 2026, we need to get on with that now. We need to be selling that to tour operators to come over. That's nearly halfway through the visit agency strategy for 500,000. And I'm not aware much in the pipeline of this significance to help to do that.
And this is, again, part of the problem that government obviously has. I mean, clearly, revenue funding, the main spend part of government's budget is going to be pretty tight for the foreseeable future. But if they are to achieve all these ambitions, they have to be prepared to invest a reasonable amount in capital projects to actually pull these things off, to actually achieve these quite ambitious targets when it comes to bringing tourists to the Isle of Man.
Absolutely, and we have to be forward-thinking. There's never going to be a right time. There's always going to be some issue, either a world crisis or some issue, and we have to bear that in mind. We also have to bear in mind that our visitors to the island are well travelled. They have minimum expectations when they come here because they go to other jurisdictions. And other jurisdictions are investing. And they're investing in their maritime heritage as well. And we are behind the curve on that. So we do need to start investing in some of our heritage sites. There was a survey conducted a couple of years ago, I think, where it was very clear that high on the priority list of visitors who come here is heritage and culture. And take Orkney as an example. They conducted a survey last year. They get nearly 200,000 cruise ship passengers go in there. They did a survey, and 47% of them said they went there just for the heritage. We're so lucky here. We have got heritage coming out of our ears. It is absolutely the backbone of our tourist industry. We have got the most amazing archaeology, our castles. We've just got so much to offer. And we need to shout about that and be proud. We actually want to create a heritage visitor attraction here that the nation can be proud of. It's not just here today, gone tomorrow. We have to be able to say this is sustainable and it's going to be engaging and people are going to want to come back for repeat visits. And the whole team working on this project That's always at the forefront of their mind. It's not a vanity project. This is about seriously engaging with the public and helping the public to enjoy their experience coming to an attraction like this and celebrate what the Isle of Man has got to offer. That's really important.
Manx National Heritage over recent years, certainly over the last decade or so, have invested in sites they already have. But I think the last time there was something as significant as this done by Manx National Heritage, you're probably going back to the times of the House of Manannan being done. Now that must be at least 20 years ago.
I'm glad you raised that. It's 26 years ago. And the other interesting point is that cost £6 million 26 years ago. And it's still giving. It's tired. It needs investment, as do all our sites. But it's still giving, and we're still getting very positive feedback about the House of Manannan. But that's how much it cost 26 years ago. And you're right, there hasn't been significant capital investment. We have delivered on very tight budgets. So we opened the TT Gallery in May this year. We're getting a phenomenal response to that. Hugely positive response coming in. We completed first phase 1 for the Laxey Wheel. We're entering into phase 2. And for phase 1, we raised a very significant sum for that. We've been investing in smaller amounts across all of our sites and trying to refresh and improve the interpretation. And again, we are competing on a worldwide stage. We have to refresh these from time to time. The Museum 100 exhibition, which has been running since last October, closes this October. Huge response. And what's really good is having people come from the island to visit who say, I haven't been to the museum for years. It's so nice to come back and see all these things. And on this project, something really heartwarming at the House of Manannan on Monday, because we took this exhibition there. And there was a couple, lady was Manx, but doesn't live here anymore, her husband from the south of England, and they handed me £40 and said, we are so delighted with what you're trying to achieve here, because they come back every year. We're just so delighted. We want to make a contribution to this project. I can't tell you how heartwarming that was to have that sort of response. Just people believing and forward thinking and saying, yeah, this is realistic. This can be done, and we can deliver that.
And I suppose, finally then, with those words ringing in our ears, how confident are you that by 2026 or whenever the estimated time is for getting this project done, how confident are you that this is actually going to happen, that the funding will be found and this is going to be delivered?
Well, we can't start it without the funding. So to achieve that deadline of the end of 25, early 2026, we actually have to secure the funding by the end of this year, January at the very latest. So the design team that we've had working on this to get it to this stage, which is stage 3 in a design process, they're now in what they call stand down. If we can pick it back up by January, there's a very strong certainty that we will achieve it by the end of December 2025. You have to say, are the materials available? What else is going to happen in the world? But if everything goes to plan, we would have it delivered by then. And we have got some buffer in there for the next season, remember. If we have it delivered by December, January, we've got 2 or 3 months if we need to go into that. But it's been very carefully worked through. And my biggest mantra all the way through is we can't promise to deliver something and then not deliver it. We have to deliver it on budget, on time, absolutely to the best of our abilities. But we need the money confirmed now, because we can't take that first step without knowing we've got the total amount. It's too much of a risk to do that. And so I'm being absolutely honest about that. We really do need to raise the rest of that amount to be able to start day one. And then we would deliver. And the other question I have had, which is, why finish it in December? Well, actually, we will use those few months. First of all, it means everyone on the island gets a first chance to come and have a look at it. And that's great that we're able to do that. But it means that we can get tour operators and travel operators here on what they call FAM trips, familiarisation visits. We can then bring them across and show them what we have, and they can then go out and sell it for us and help bring more visitors here, which will help the economy. So there is some logic to having it completed at the end of a year before the full season starts. And you can do snagging and you can get feedback from local population as well about how they feel about it.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.